Right, good morning and welcome to the webinar on using blocks in Trimble Business Centre and specifically the setup and the workflow for using the blocks. My name is Richard Selby, and the themes that we'll be looking at within the webinar are bringing your drawings into TBC, drawings that would contain the blocks that need to be set up, how to create those blocks and define the insertion points for them, so we know that when they're drawn freehand within Trimble Business Centre or used with a code library to draft topographic surveys, how they relate to the field survey points. We need to look at where those blocks are saved and how we can save them to file so that they can be used with the feature definition manager and exchanged easily with colleagues if need be. And we'll draft some example data to see the blocks that will have been set up and how they sit on the insertion points. A little look at how we can edit a block once it's been drafted, and also discuss how blocks can be moved from other software, specifically GeoSite, so that they can be used within TBC. So when we're talking about blocks within Trimble Business Centre, essentially they're fulfilling the same purpose within TBC as they do within any other CAD software. So we have a group of objects which are grouped together to behave as a single object, and these are often used to portray or create repeated content. So ideal for survey drafting for Symbology. These blocks could be drawn from scratch in TBC, or more often than not, they'll be imported from CAD files, typically DWG or DXF format, that already have the line work or blocks already defined within them. For Trimble Business Centre, the blocks can have up to 3 insertion points, and these insertion points must be defined before they're set up for drafting using the feature definition manager within TBC. The feature definition manager being the part of the software that manages the code library for drafting surveys. Now we'll come to the feature definition manager a little bit later in the webinar. We'll see there are actually 2 types of features that can be set up within the feature definition manager for drafting. We've got block features and we've also got point features. Now for point features, the insertion point is going to default to the center of the block. So for point features, the insertion points are not quite so critical, but for block features, certainly we need to define these insertion points quite carefully. So you can put the insertion point anywhere on the block or even offset from the block as well. So with a 1-point symbol, typically the insertion point would be the center, and a 2-point symbol, well, it could be say any 2 positions on or around the symbol. And then for a 3-point symbol, it's fairly standard. We'll have 2 points to give us the length of the block, the symbol to be drafted, and then a 3rd point to provide the width dimension. So for point features here in the feature definition manager, this is the feature definition manager we can see on the right hand side of the screen. It's where we set up all the information that's going to be used to draft survey data within TBC. So the example we can see here is for a point feature, for a spot level in this case, with the field code, PSL, and we can see a simple plus block symbol shown in the preview part of the dialog there on the screen. So as just mentioned, the blocks used by point features will just use a single insertion point, which is typically the center of the block. You can have multiple blocks set up per point feature. This one only has the one. You can set up several. And it's also possible to use attributes to define the size of the block to be drawn on the plan view and consequently the sheet view using attributes. For block features, as I say, slightly different from point features. With block features, you've got up to 3 insertion points to place that block on the drawing, and for that you can assign 1 block symbol per feature. So for a large manhole, you'd set up a rectangular block, typically with 3 insertion points to place it on the drawing. Okay, so at this stage, before we go to discuss GeoSite, I'm going to go into Trimble Business Center and go through the workflow of setting up these blocks ready to use. Now I've got my TBC fired up. I'm just going to start a new project here. Select my template. Okay. Open File Explorer, and within this folder I've got some CAD drawings that I can use to set up blocks for use in TBC. So the first one that I'm going to drag in to the plan view is a plus symbol. So I'm just going to drag and drop it in. I don't need to see the warnings there. Let's turn off the grid lines. And we can see here what we've got is actually 2 lines forming that plus symbol that's coming from the CAD drawing. So, to work with the blocks in TBC, go into the drafting ribbon, and we can see there's a little block section here on the ribbon. We've got a create block button here, as well as import, insert and purge the blocks from the current project. So in this case, as you might imagine, the first stage of the workflow to set these up for use in TBC, starting from scratch, is to use the create block button. Dialog opens on the right hand side, and it's prompting me for a name for this particular block, and I'm going to call it simple. We've got a selection window, dialog there, and drag a box around there to select both those lines, and then I need to define the insertion point for what is going to be a single point block symbol. So to do that, I'm going to use my snaps actually. If I right click on the plan view, I'll get my snaps menu appear. So if I want to do the intersection of some lines, I'll select the option here, click on line 1 and line 2. You can see that there's a little red number 1 insertion point being entered there on coordinates 0, 0 on the plan view. Let's create, and it confirms here that that block called plus simple has been created. I can close that up for the moment. In fact, I can now delete those original lines from the drawing. Next step in the workflow is to insert that block. So it's been created, but it's not actually here visible on the screen in a form that I can export it to a new CAD drawing to allow me to set it up with a feature definition manager or to save it to exchange with colleagues. So the block it's going to insert is here. It's just plus simple. For the layer, let's click on points, location, enter 0, 0, and insert. I can close the dialog, and there's my plus block. So now it's one entity as opposed to the 2 lines. I'm just going to select that and choose the export button to export it to a DXF. I'll use the pick button here to just drop it onto my desktop. And I'm going to put it into a folder called configured blocks. So I'm actually saving it as a CAD drawing with that insertion point defined. If I hit export now, it's been created. I have a look in my configured blocks folder. There it is. Okay, that's setting up a single insertion point block. The next thing we're going to do is do the same, but just with a typical 2-point block feature, such as for a gate. So same again, exactly the same workflow. We've got a gate symbol imported from a CAD drawing, but it doesn't have any insertion points set up for it yet. So we need to tell TBC that this is going to be a new block. So we're going to create block. And it's going to be called gate. In fact, I'll call it gate 2-point. I've got it selected on the plan view. My insertion points for the first location, again, I'm going to use my snap, so I'm going to right click here and go to middle of segment and click at the top. And for location 2, same again, right click in middle of segment and click at the bottom. So I've now got my 2 insertion points set up. I can create that. Yeah, wait for my confirmation. There it is. And it's now defined. So again, I don't need this bit of the drawing now. I can delete that. Can we go to insert block? And this time it's the gate that I want to put in. So I'm putting some coordinates for it. Hit insert, and there it is, ready to be saved to DXF file with those insertion points defined. So exactly the same as last time. Let's go to my configured blocks folder. That's my name, and there we go. So we've now done set up a 2-point block, and the last one to set up will be a 3-point block. This time a little bit different, with a vehicle symbol. You can see on the plan view here. Again, if I click on this, it's a number of polylines defining the shape of the vehicle. Use create block again. Give it a name. Selecting the objects to form the block and set up the insertion points. So this time I'm going to just click where I want the insertion points to be, imagining where they would typically be surveyed in the field. So in this corner over here, that's my 3 positions specified, and go to create. Yep, let's confirm it's been created. I can close that tool, and now I can take that out of the drawing and place it in as a block. There we go. So again, let's just put in some coordinates to place it on here. Okay, so let's place the vehicle on the fan view. Just need to hit insert now. And there we go, that's now set up as a 3-point block feature. And again, just going to export that to my DXF file to keep a record of that. Configured blocks, I'm putting them all in the same folder. So I'm building up a bit of a library here of blocks to be used with TBC. Okay, so that's set up the blocks themselves. Now we're going to look at how they would be set up for use with the feature definition manager. I already talked about that we have point features and block features that are set up there, and we'll see how they interact with the files that I've just created. So I can take this one out now as well. I've just got an empty plan view. I'm going to launch the feature definition manager. So this is the code library editor that partners with TBC, and here we set up a code library for drafting with TBC, but also the same code library then is used with Trimble Access in the field to code up field surveys too. At the moment it's empty, so I'm going to start a new library. So I'm just going to build one up from scratch, showing how these blocks are used. On the left-hand margin here, you build up what's called a list of categories. Categories could be groups of features such as road features, vegetation features, utility features, etc. In this case, I'm going to just create a couple of categories, point features and block features, so we can just discriminate between the two that I've set up. So here, I'm going to create a new category, and I'll call this point features. And do the same again. And this one is going to be block features. So point features, block features. Now I need to put something into point features. So I can right click and do that, or I can use the little buttons at the top here to create the feature types to go in the categories. Create a new point feature, and I'm just going to set up a commonly used feature, spot level, field code, category. It's going into my point features category. I can set up some labeling to go with that as well, and I can pull in the file that we'll leave that one for now. We'll leave the label styles. We'll come to that perhaps in another webinar. The feature layer that's going to go on I'll just set up a new layer. And we'll call this spot levels. Okay. So that's going to be created, and at the moment there's no Symbology set up for it. So to do that, I'm going to right click into this lines and symbols part of the dialog and pick up new symbol, and so it's a simple plus that we're going to use, and we need to bring it in to the feature definition manager. Click on the little arrow here, go to import symbols. Now at this stage, you can go to the pick button here, and there's a symbols file that has got some symbols, some default Trimble symbols set up in there that you can import, or you can browse to survey drawing or one of these block files that you've set up which contains the block symbols in it. It could be like I've done here, where we've got the symbols in individual files, or they could be housed within a single CAD drawing file. So this is the one I want. This is the one I set up a moment ago, the simple plus. There it is. It's been read from the DXF file. I'm going to click the arrow to put it across to my existing symbols list. Click OK, and then it's available to select. Okay. The sizing here for the plan view, I'll leave as a default of 1 meter. Click OK, and there it is set up. So really easy to do. The next one that I will set up is the block feature for the gate. So this time I'm using this button here for a new block feature definition. Similar dialog, need to give it a name. A field code to use. It's going to go into the block features category. Okay. Specify a new layer for it to go onto. Okay, and the block name. This is where we need to set up the block that's going to be drafted from the library. So if I go to import blocks, again I'm looking for my symbol that I set up. Here it is. It's imported that in, so I can now pick the symbol configured earlier. And how to place it? Well, I'm going to place it on the drawing from 2 points, based on the 2 insertion points that were set up earlier. And no, I don't want to include it in any surface modeling, so I can untick that box. Hit OK, a little preview should appear. There we go, we can see the 2 insertion points, and that should be good to go. There we are. So the last one set up will be the 3-point feature, which was the vehicle. Again, pretty much the same. Go to a new block feature definition. Put in the field code for it. It's going to go into the block features. So we can do layer for it. There we go, vehicles. Bring in the block, import blocks again. It's in a DXF file. There it is. And this time I'm going to draft it using 3 points. Okay, so I just need to pick that in the drop down, yep, from 3 points. There we go. So that one's set up. So those 3 that I've set up so far, the blocks themselves have come from the DXF drawings with the insertion points that we configured earlier in the webinar. I've actually got a topo survey open here, so it's a CAD drawing with an entire drafted survey open in it, and there are some tree symbols in here. There's plenty of other blocks in here as well. So I select the tree symbol, I can see that it's a block, go to the properties, and you can see the name of that block is symbol 035. I'm just going to close up AutoCAD there. If I want to use that tree symbol from that survey drawing in the feature definition manager, and hence then to draft up topo surveys with TBC, I can do that for point features really easily, because as I said earlier, for the point features it's going to default to the center of the block anyway. We don't need to necessarily set up the insertion points like we do with block features. So I'm going to create a new point feature then, and I'm going to set up that tree. I'll call it tree general. Give it a field code. It's going to go into, this time, point features. Let's create a new layer called vegetation. Okay, a bit of colour as well, a bit of variation. I'm not going to include a tree in the surface, and OK to that. Now, mentioned in the slides earlier, you can use attributes to size symbols for point features. So I'm going to set up an attribute here. So right click and do a new attribute, and it's going to be an integer value just for the spread of the branches. So we can put some defaults here. Would be used with this code library if it was used in the field. Actually, let's go maximum spread 20 meters. Tap OK, and that attribute is set up in the library. So as I say, if that was put onto a field controller, the field surveyor could use that attribute field to put in a number which would help draw the spread of the particular tree measured on the drawing. So when I go across to this box again where we set up the symbols, right click in here and do a new symbol. And what do we want here? We want a general tree. It's not here in the library, so I'm going to import and use the pick button. Come to my desktop and DWG filter. So here's the topo drawing file that was open earlier. I'll click on that and it will sieve through and it will find all the blocks defined in that CAD drawing. It was number 35, symbol 35. That's the block that I want to bring across. Of course, bring all of them across. Should I want to use, have them all available, but let's just stick with number 35, put it into my existing list. There we go. So now on the drop down there, it's available to pick. And in this section here, we can say how we want to scale the size of it. Do like we did earlier, using a fixed value as we did the plus symbol for the spot level. But we can also change the input method to attribute and pick the attribute that's going to be used to control the size of the block when it's drawn and drafted using this library. Just tap OK on that now, and that's set up, ready to go for a tree feature. Okay, so let's save my my library so that we can see how that's going to work within TBC. close that up, and I'll put together a little text file that's got those some coding for some points set up there, so we can see how it's going to be drawn up on the plan view. It's going to drag and drop the CSV file in that's got those coded points in them. So just some example coordinates. Bring those in, set the origin. There we go. And to bring in the code library, very simple. Again, just drag and drop that in. And it's now in the project. I look in Project Exploring TBC, really nice little feature. Use it all the time, Project Explorer. Inside imported files, you can see all the files that have been imported into this project during the course of my processing in the webinar so far. Let's go to the survey ribbon where we've got the process feature codes button. What do I want to process and draft up? It's the data in the imported CSV file. I'm going to hit process source, and the blocks that I set up earlier are now being used with that library to draft up the features on the display. So you can see the single point definition sitting on the survey point, the single survey point coming from the CSV file. And for the gate symbol, the block extended between the two insertion points, again coordinates from the CSV, and the same again for the vehicle, points 4, 5 and 6, and the vehicle sitting on those. Point 7 looks a little bit weeny at the moment. Let's look at what's going on here. Let's just open the properties for it. So all I've imported for it is a coordinate at this stage. I haven't actually given it an attribute value, which I should do really. So let's put in 4 meters for the spread, and that will now resize accordingly because it's using that attribute value to control the size of the block. Okay, so that's setting up the blocks, setting them up with the feature definition manager, and that's drafting them. So there's the workflow for the blocks from initial setup to getting them in a state that they can be used to be drafted for topographic surveys. Something we've been asked before is, with these blocks, once they've been placed, is it possible to edit them? And the answer to that is yes. So take this vehicle block here. We've been asked if it's possible to edit these to show damage. Well, yeah, if I go onto the CAD ribbon, there's a number of CAD editing functions on here, one of which is explode. So I need to explode that block in order to properly edit it. After it's done the explosion, it's going to delete the block. Let's go explode. Okay, let's turn off all those string annotations, because we've got now back to the group of strings rather than a single block object as we had earlier. TBC version 5 is the ability to write macros, your own macros, to provide new functionality into TBC, and there's some examples in here that I can actually utilize straight away. So if I select everything that's there and go convert to line string, and OK, it's going to convert those polylines into fully editable line strings. So we've got a few more options on them. So if I click on a line segment, there's various things I can do with this, and I can drag on the nodes. I can go to edit, I can delete the whole line segment, toggle between straight and curved, various editing tools along here. So let's take out some of this. Okay, let's drag this in. Just need to leave that bit. Right, click and delete again. Okay, so quite quickly I'm able to just modify that block to show the adjustments that need to be made. Now moving back to GeoSite, how we can bring blocks through to TBC that might have been used with GeoSite in the past. Well, the two ways of doing it. You could use the way that I showed a moment ago, where you take a drawing that you've previously drafted and exported to CAD from GeoSite, and then you import that drawing into TBC, create a new block and save it to a new DXF with the insertion points set up, or if it's just a point feature that you need to set up, just use it straight in the feature definition manager to set up the blocks in the drawing as point features. If you want to set up a single block in its own file by itself, then all you need to do is export that block from GeoSite to a CAD drawing and then set it up in TBC as we did earlier. What I'll do is I will just open GeoSite now. Okay, there it is, and I will go to File and Open, and I'll open a symbol. So the symbols are stored in this .vdf file format, so you can see, if you're familiar with GeoSite, a lot of the typical standard GeoSite symbols here. Got the vehicles folder here, the road markings, so let's have a look in here, let's find something we can use. Let's use the slow text as per the slide. So I'll open that up. There it is in GeoSite. So I'm just going to go to File, Export to, select an Autodesk format. Just tap OK there. Let's see where we're going to save that. So I'm going to my webinar folder, raw blocks. So what have we got here? We've got a slow text. There we go. So that's exported now to a CAD drawing. So I'll just go back to TBC. Let's just delete all of that into my raw blocks folder, and there it is. So bring it in, and once it's in here, it's just exactly the same workflow as earlier to set it up for use in TBC. So if you remember, it's on the drafting ribbon, the functionality relating to blocks. So we're going to create that as a new block. It's going to be text. Select the contents of the drawing and then specify the insertion point. So you've got to define whether you're going to go perhaps right to left, surveying your text, or left to right in the field. If we can go left to right on the ground, then I'd start with the somewhere in the bottom left-hand corner where you're likely to perhaps pick up a point on the text, and then perhaps the bottom of the W for the second point, and maybe the top of the W for the third point. And I can create that. Confirms it's been created. And as per earlier, once it's been created, you can then insert it into the drawing. Do a new one. Let's go over here. Let's go and then we'll go another 2 meters. Let's make it 2 meters wide, and then we'll go perhaps a meter high and insert, and there it is. And the 3 insertion points, and then it's ready to save to the DXF and then ready to be set up in the library or exchanged with colleagues. One thing to also be aware of with TBC, just using blocks that have been set up within your TBC templates. If you just want to draw them freehand onto a view, that's where the insert block can come in again. So you've got your blocks here, but in order to get more blocks available, you can use the button above, which is import blocks. So we haven't looked at this yet. There is some Trimble default blocks for various things, such as grids, north arrows, scale bar, etc., and other symbols that you can select here so that they're available to insert into your drawings and use with the feature definition manager as well. You can additionally point use the pick button here to point to a folder which has got your DXF files with the insertion points set up, so that you can bring in those symbols and insert them into the project. The reason these have got lines through them already is because they already exist within this project that I've got open. If I wanted to bring it in some north arrows though, for example, I'll just tick on here, click import, and then straight away it will go to that insert block dialog we saw a moment ago. So it's jumped down to here. It's gone into the north arrows group, and north arrow number 4 is my particular favourite. Single point block feature, and I can just drop that and insert onto the drawing. So then we've reached the end of the setup and the workflow of using the blocks, both within TBC, setting them up with the feature definition manager, and some example points in there that have been coded so that we could see how the coding applied to the content of the feature definition manager to get those blocks shown on the screen. So I'd like to thank you for attending the webinar. If there's any follow-up questions relating to the use of blocks or drafting in general within TBC, then please get in touch with ourselves. The support email address and number for the team here in the UK, support@korekgroup.com, the number shown, and for the guys in Ireland, slightly different, support IRE@korekgroup.com, again, the number from the Ireland office. Just a reminder, we have the knowledge base facility as well, where we're building up a repository of useful documents and videos that can well help you with your Trimble Business Centre Access and K-matic and other software products that we support. So thanks again, and until the next webinar.